Hey guys, been a while since I talked about any whitelist stuff. That was, I think, my most popular video at this point, just talking about different banned weapons and why, which makes sense why it's popular because the the fact that competitive TF2 or sixes, well, Highlander does it as well. Actually, every competitive format has some whitelists. But the fact that whitelists exist, that some weapons are banned and some are not, is a very controversial thing among casual players for some reason, I guess. I mean, understandable. Like if you're if you're like a cow mangler main and it's banned, I guess. But I do think a lot of the vitriol comes from people who just kind of don't like the idea of competitive TF2 and are looking for reasons not to like it. But of course, it's going to drive a bunch of discussion and gonna boost, algorithm videos that are looking for that kind of engagement. On top of there being an audience of people who are just genuinely curious about these unlocks and how they might play differently in competitive TF2, and just like hearing about weapons in TF2 in general. But anyway, I did talk about that some time ago now, not quite nearing a year, I guess, but pretty close. And there have been some developments, and there's also things that I might not agree with that I said last time around that I just want to talk about again. So yeah, again, sorry for the kind of boring visuals here. We are just going to be on whitelist.tf, which, yeah, so if you want to just treat this more podcasty, then go ahead. Less interesting visuals than my usual videos, which already are kind of lackluster in that regard. So yeah, anything else to get out of the way? Yeah, again, I mean, I will continue forever, I'm sure, to see kind of misinformation and assumptions being made about the whitelist and what weapons even are banned or not, because you will see a lot of varying things being brought up there. And it's understandable because some different leagues have slightly different whitelists. Like, for example, if I go to ETF2L, let's see here. Yeah, like Pyro has some weapons that are banned versus North America. That just isn't the case. And we will mention ETF2L because there's been some interesting whitelist developments on that front. And I'm sure that some of this comes from a kind of willful ignorance, but some of it's just like outdated info and things change. So yeah. Okay. And what else? Oh, one of the big things, like kind of the argument that I was making in the last whitelist video was that I was trying to kind of kill the notion that whitelists in any way exist as like off class control, which just isn't the case at all. The off classes are generally weaker because of the actual like inherent traits of the classes in a sixes setting, and you can have whatever opinions about the relationship or attitude that sixes players and the community at whole have towards full-time off-classing as a thing, but no, there really aren't banned weapons as a means to prevent these off-classes from being played, with maybe the exception of the Wrangler. But anyway, I think that's enough kind of introduction stuff here. Let's just get right into it. Am I going to go over every weapon or just the ones I have different opinions about? I think we can go pretty quick here and just talk about these different weapons. If it is just very similar to my previous opinion, then I might just direct you guys back to the prior video. So anyway, for the taunts, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of banned taunts. Any taunt that you can just stop at any time that you want, rather than having a set duration, are by default banned because they allow you to look around corners and around walls in third person. Yeah, so those are by default not allowed. So yeah, that's why the majority of banned items in sixes are going to be taunts. Okay, do we start? Well, we'll get to the multi-class at the end, because base jumper is probably the most interesting one on this list. Starting off with Scout, Soda Popper, again, just a very strong scattergun, and also like an insane kind of 1v1 tool with that hype. I don't remember what exactly my opinion was last time, but I think that it would just be quite strong, whether it's ban worthy or not. Don't really have a strong opinion on that. Honestly, I don't know how many scouts would even necessarily use it. So if this is something that got unbanned, I'm sure would see some of it get used, and it could be quite powerful. But overall, it's kind of a take it or leave it thing. Yeah. Bonk, this one, I was definitely on board for having it banned because of kind of how disruptive it is into last against like guns and stuff like that, making just standard double sacks really, really strong against guns. I don't know if I'm of that opinion anymore. I don't think I think that use case is still true. That's probably what it would be used for, to be honest, is against sentries. I don't think it would be particularly strong at getting behind on the flank like it is in casual play. In fact, I think it'd be pretty bad for that, because usually getting behind is a matter of kind of spotting and timing. Because if you are spotted with the bonk, then it's very easy for the players to just kind of chase you, right? And take that fight. So you're still going to be dependent on kind of the same factors to get behind with the bonk as you would be otherwise. So it's not really a flanking tool, more of a just soak up damage. In a last situation, I'm thinking now, I wonder how it would be used like against Ubers. That would be kind of funny if your team's like caught to an Uber and you just bonk your scout, your pocket scout, just have them try and body block or something. It would definitely be goofy. But yeah, I don't really think this thing needs to be banned necessarily. Doesn't seem like it would be that horrible, and that's an opinion I've changed. Critical, on the other hand, probably leave it out, because again, the possibility of taking like a critical at Uber sounds just horrible. Being able to mini crit people, especially on Scout, really horrible. And as you'll notice as well, the class with the most banned weapons is Scout, because Scout is one of the strongest combat classes in this format, and just giving Scout extra tools is usually, not that balanced. And critical is a decent example, just giving Scout mini crits. Okay, I'm sure you can make the case that the metagame can adjust around that, but yeah, that's a matter of opinion, I suppose. Next, you have Flying Guillotine. Kind of similar deal, just brainless spam on Scout, and it recharges so quickly. It is a lot of damage, and people don't really like that on Scout, because again, Scout just such a powerful class. Giving him a spam option just seems really strong and kind of unbalanced. And this is related actually to another weapon that I will talk about for Scout in a moment. But again, you can, I'm sure, make the case that, Flying Guillotine, you could let it in and things would adjust. Yeah. But whether or not the format would be more fun or better for it, I don't think it would be. And the only thing that the Flying Guillotine would make better is the fact that you can just tick off the box and say one fewer weapon is banned, which in my opinion is not a good thing in and of itself. I think it's important that the game is actually fun. Okay, Mad Milk. This one, I don't think there's a case to include. This is kind of unambiguously broken. Just giving so much healing. It completely centralizes team fights to the degree in which a team that is milked playing against a team that isn't is just at such a disadvantage that they kind of just lose the fight, and that's kind of ridiculous, forcing scouts all to run it, and it kind of diminishes from the game. Not even kind of, it diminishes from the game a lot, and I guess dampens, it flattens out a lot of the different ways that teams can win fights and all the sort of things that go on. it just centralizes things a lot. And yeah, Mad Milk, definitely not a weapon to include. Pocket pistol, yet again, one of these scout secondaries that are just strong on an already strong class, so it's not allowed. I'm curious actually if this is banned in Europe, because I have no idea if it would be. Did I just go to RGL? I think I went to ETF2L. Okay, yeah, it's not allowed in ETF2L either. But again, this is one of those cases where, like, the healing's pretty nice. It shoots faster, so, you know, faster damage output as well, even though it does have a smaller magazine size. But nonetheless, just strong scout secondary on a class that's already so strong means that, you know, it can be a little unbalanced. Okay, now the other thing that I'm going to talk about here that actually is allowed is the Rap Assassin, but similar to Guillotine, this is a controversial weapon because of that exact thing. It's just giving scout spam. Spam is usually... I mean, spam is fair, like full stop. I think that Rap Assassin is a fair weapon, and it's something you can react to and dodge and all of that. It is very annoying to get hit with, though, and I understand why people would have more fun without it. So there's definitely a case that people have made that this thing is not worth playing with. And I think in Europe they recently have been playing without it. Okay, and nonetheless, that's Scout, class with the most banned items because it is such a strong class. Now, again, you can make the case to unban some of these, but it's really just a matter of opinion, and I don't think the landscape of the actual format would change much at all if most of these were unbanned, with the exception of maybe the Mad Milk. But everything else, like, you're still utilizing most of the same strategies, and the same kind of advantages and disadvantages exist, and the same basic fundamentals of the format would be basically unchanged with any of these weapons, but they might have little micro strategies or just be really strong. So yeah. Okay, Soldier. Cow Mangler is banned. Now, again, this is kind of a sad case because this was unbanned for quite a while back in the day, and a lot of Soldier mains really loved using this thing. It's actually becoming a very common jump weapon because, for those of you who don't know, the stock rocket the original and all other rocket launchers, with the exception of the Cow Mangler, fire rockets from different locations. So stock and all the unlocks, besides Cow Mangler, fire from the right, and original fires from the middle. Cow Mangler is a little in between, which is unique, and yeah, a lot of jumpers have been using it for that kind of trade-off and that benefit. So Cow Mangler, what's good about it, getting a sip of water here, excuse me, is that ammo management no longer a thing. That does mean that spam is easier to do. As a soldier, you really only have to worry about your reload downtime rather than your actual ammo count, so there's no reason not to just be spamming doors for the most part. So there's that, but rocket spam is good, don't get me wrong, there's a reason soldiers go for it, but it's not overwhelming, right? You're going to be taking 50 damage from a direct across the map, which is a lot, but the splash, if you can dodge the rockets, right, the splash going to be doing closer to like 30 damage, which is a lot more manageable, on top of the fact that you have, you know, it's a pretty slow-moving projectile, so you can kind of dodge that spam. It just makes it so that choke points can be kind of rough. But that being said, I mean, if a soldier just has better timing, then they can be doing that same spam without the Cow Mangler. The big thing with the Cow Mangler, and the reason why it is banned, and why I think it should stay banned, is the charge shot. Just because being able to one-shot a medic with the afterburn and not having damage fall off means that charge shots from this thing are just really stupid and feel very random. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier with spam, like across the map, that fall off doesn't exist with the mini crit of a charge shot. On top of like the afterburn, it's just ridiculous. If there was a pro mod that restricted the charge shot so you couldn't go for it, then this thing would certainly be allowed. And yeah, it's unfortunate that that one thing kind of ruins the gun. But that's how it goes, so that's why Cow Mangler's banned. Okay, disciplinary action. I did have a generally anti-ban position on this last time around. Because the speed boost lets you do some cool things. It lets you go for cool bombs that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do with that faster speed. I don't know if I brought up heavy to mid as one of the reasons or not earlier. Because heavy to mid gets brought up a lot as like the reason for a lot of unlocks being banned, which isn't really the case anymore. That kind of heavy to mid-ism, I might just be like a dead theory. I'm not sure, but the classic heavy to mid unlocks, at least in North America, have been banned, and there has not been a surge of heavies to mid. So I don't think that's a reason why the disciplinary action is banned. However, getting to mid fast is very important outside of it being a heavy, right? So being able to disciplinary action whip your medic, or if you whip the pocket scout and your medic's beaming the scout, I presume they would get the speed boost, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, they must, right? Because they get the speed boost from like baby faces, I guess. But anyway, teams would be basically required to run this thing to mid, because the team that shows up faster to mid is just at a fundamental advantage. And so now you're more so asking the question of whether it's better for the format for everyone to be running the disciplinary action because you have to show up as fast as possible to mid, or if you value the unlock diversity of being able to run the escape plan or the market gardener. I tend to lean more towards I like the soldiers having the option to run escape plan or market gardener, because those are both interesting unlocks that are pretty well balanced between each other. So I think the format is generally better with that melee diversity allowed for soldier, but you can have different opinions, and yeah, it's kind of up to you. But that is one of the primary drivers in this thing being banned, is like, if it's not, then you're basically forced to run it just to show up to mid faster, which doesn't make the game any more interesting in my opinion. Even though I did mention those disciplinary action bombs could be neat. But yeah. So anyway, Pyro, no banned unlocks. Demo, no banned unlocks. Same as before. Heavy, still Natasha. And I'm sure a lot of casual players would love to ban that thing too. I'm just going to breeze over that. Fists of Steel are banned. I do get a lot of comments on the prior video, and a lot of people mentioning how it's bugged with like Uber build rate. Again, my opinion on this thing hasn't changed at all. I still don't see any reason why this thing would be banned at all. Even with being able to build Uber, even though your heavy's at like full buff or whatever. I don't know exactly how it works, but you're not, as far as I'm aware, you're not building faster than just your max build rate. You see heavies on last, and when you're on last, you have no shortage of Uber building options. The spawn is right there, so if your demo's not on Zatoichi, they can switch to it at a moment's notice. You can very easily choose to build with a scout if you want to. I mean, those are your main options. You can have a soldier build even if you really want to, but just having your demo go Zatoichi, freeze your scout up to off class and do whatever. Yeah, you're not short of building options on last, and I don't see how the defensive capabilities of Fists of Steel help them in any way in sixes, so I really don't think this thing has any need to be banned. Again, if you include the Fists of Steel, it doesn't really change anything, so yeah, you just kind of get to tick off that box and say one fewer weapon is banned. Okay, again, the kind of heavy to mid items, Steak Sandwich, Eviction Notice, Gloves of Running Urgently, all of those are completely allowed in North America. Not sure about ETF2L, but we don't see heavy to mid in North America, so I doubt we would in ETF2L, to be honest. Okay, moving on to Engineer. Rescue Ranger, opinion hasn't really changed at all. Just makes keeping up guns easier. This is mostly a disadd last thing, although honestly even Uber's on last. A similar case can be made. Because spamming down a gun is something that teams will try to do into last before sacking, because the gun just physically denies the bomb that you're sacking with. So very defensively potent and prevents you from being able to sack onto the other team's medic particularly well. And then disadd last, it just lets you guarantee tank a gun rather than have the decision between whether you want to, as an engineer, be committed physically and in danger of spam and being killed by an Uber to try and tank your gun and keep it up, or just abandon it outright. This thing just lets you do both. It lets you be safe while also tanking the gun. So it kind of minimizes decisions there. I don't think this weapon would be particularly overwhelming, but it does make Engineer stronger, a class that people already don't like the strength of in sixes, because, again, NG's just very strong. Now, again, to be clear, to bring up that point earlier, this has nothing to do with whether NG is a viable full-time off-class. Whether the Rescue Ranger is allowed or not strictly, it only has to do with whether NG is stronger in the role he's always going to play, right? This is always going to be a defensive off-class because that's just what the Engineer succeeds at. Okay, Short Circuit, I hope that it's pretty self-explanatory why being able to just delete projectiles is kind of stupid mechanic, and this thing really should be not allowed in like even casual play. What an awful weapon. But yeah, again, guns just won't go down in an Uber, which is an important thing because those Uber adds into last are your primary way of scoring rounds. So you don't really get to score rounds against a Short Circuit defended sentry gun, or at least it's way, way, way harder to in a way that's just not balanced. Wrangler, basically the same deal. And again, this is the one unlock that you can maybe make the case that like an NG with minis and Wrangler could maybe be a viable full-time off-class. I really don't know. I honestly kind of doubt it. But if you really, really wanted to make the case that Sixes players ban weapons to keep off-classes in check, as in you don't see them full-time, this is maybe the one weapon you can make the case for. But again, it just makes Engineers so much more potent in those disadd last situations in which it's already such a strong class. That it just makes pushing last with that advantage you've usually earned by winning a fight very decisively. It neutralizes that in a lot of ways, which is not good or fair. Okay, Medic Quick Fix. Quick Fix, again, is kind of a... Oh, also, I still see people say that the Gunslinger is banned. It never has been, as far as I'm aware. But moving on. Quick Fix, does it really still have faster Uber rate? This is such a weird item. Because let's just look at this thing. The stats have changed throughout the years. Also, again, whenever I get stats wrong, people love to like jump down my throat and be like, "Oh, these competitive players don't even know the weapons they're banning." Like, dude, I have been playing this game for like literally over a decade. I've seen so many iterations of these weapons and how they've been rebalanced and whatnot. Like, it's a little hard to keep up, okay? Quick Fix is just such a weird and goofy weapon, because there's a lot going on. So, for starters, the Uber is just inferior to a stock Uber, and that is a big deal. It does charge faster. 10% is admittedly not very much. Like a guaranteed 10 add is probably not enough to use this weapon. But being able to jump around with your med and basically just have them be safe at all times is pretty dumb. I can see it being fun, but honestly, like, one of the main reasons that I think the format's better without Quick Fix is just that, like, the Medigun Kritzkrieg dichotomy is just so perfect, right? Honestly, like, crits is quite rare, so just like stock Medigun in and of itself, like tracking Ubers and just one medic on each team, both building at the same rate, both building with like stock Uber, which is what you see for like 95% of the time, is such a captivating centralizing mechanic. And I always talk about Ubers, the centralizing mechanic, but it really is awesome. And yeah, captivating, the word I used earlier, I think is a good way to put it. Because there's so much going on there. Every decision that you make about your positioning, who to shoot at, whether you want to get aggressive or play passive or whatnot, all of these factor in the state of Ubers relative to each other to some degree. And Quick Fix definitely throws a huge wrench in that. But there's a lot of weird, broken kind of micro scenarios, isn't the right word, interactions with this unlock that, yeah, I don't think it adds much to the format. Now, Vaccinator, this thing very definitively should stay out. This is such an annoying weapon to play against in all formats, not just competitive. And actually, interestingly enough, I know of a big no restriction sixes players and advocates still think this thing should be banned from no restriction sixes, or at least that the format would be better if it were banned. Which is funny because that entire format centers around, no bans, but no, these weapons are still fundamentally broken. So yeah, what's wrong with the Vaccinator? Well, Vaccinator, honestly, full time, I don't think is very powerful because there are enough different damage types between scouts with bullet damage and soldiers and demos with explosive that the slower heal rate and not having an Uber means that it's really not that great full time, but you don't have to use it full time. You can only use it when you need to. So you do see on Disadd Last sometimes teams will spawn crits because it builds faster than Medigun, so you have a chance of getting a crits Krieg before you lose the round basically, in situations where you wouldn't have had time to build a regular Uber. Vaccinator is like that, but even more pronounced because it builds so much faster and has the mini Ubers basically. So it makes defending last with a Vaccinator spawned at 0% is so much better than defending last with a Crits Krieg or a Medigun spawned at 0. To where teams would just be incentivized to switch on Disadd Last, and then you just can't push into last, and things even out. Again, a lot of these weapons just make defending last way too easy when defending last on Disadd specifically, when that should be something that's, when executed well, I don't know, there's just a good balance there, I suppose. You expect to win a round with add into last, or you'd like to, but there's still plenty of defensive counterplay present outside of just using broken defensively oriented unlocks, that there's just a good balance there that weapons like the Vaccinator just kind of ruin, to be honest. So yeah, keep that thing out. Okay, Sniper, Machina, just make Sniper better. Wouldn't really change much if it were included. Honestly, same with Sydney Sleeper. Sniper, I think. Now, oh man. A whitelist take of mine that would actually get people mad at me is I think Sniper just, the format would be more fun if Sniper just weren't allowed at all. Machina and Sydney Sleeper just make the class a little bit better. Again, similar to some of these unlocks, such as the Scout unlocks. It just makes a strong class already better, and people don't like it. But again, whether you include it or not, it doesn't fundamentally change the format in really any way. Girardi, on the other hand, what's Girardi actually does something. Like Machina, for example, is just a better sniper rifle, for all intents and purposes. But Girardi actually does something different, which is, it kind of deals with your check in a way that isn't that healthy, because the main way that you deal with snipers is by bombing a soldier onto them. But if that sniper has Girardi, then that just turns into a trade rather than just a kill. So it makes it so that, and on top of the fact that you could theoretically use it in a team fight, that wouldn't happen very often at all, because sniper is more of a backlines. You don't want to be that close kind of class. But in those cases where you're, caught, then suddenly just applying mini crits to everyone is kind of broken and a little stupid. So I think Girardi is a justified ban. And then finally we have the Diamondback. And again, Diamondback is, not actually finally, we have some stuff to talk about. Diamondback is curious because, again, it's one of those unlocks that I don't think really changes that much. Because a spy that gets a stab is immediately so much less threatening than a spy that never revealed themselves. Because knowing there's a spy makes your odds of getting a spy play successfully executed go down so much. So you can maybe make and I understand why players wouldn't want to play against the Diamondback, because it would feel so stupid as a medic to get forced or even drop to a crit Diamondback just because that spy farmed a stab on like a flank member or something. But I don't think that farming stabs or farming a stab for a crit on, one of the players that aren't expecting to be the target of the spy, such as, a flank member, I don't think that would really be a viable strategy, to be honest. I don't think that really happens. So again, I understand why people don't want to play against Diamondback. I don't think the format really changes much at all if it's included. I guess there's the case to be made where in those cases where the combo's kind of clumped, and you stab the demo hoping to stab the med before you can turn around, you can instead just pull this out and confirm that kill. So it would definitely get used, but again, I don't think it makes spy broken or anything like that. Yeah. Okay, moving on now. Reserve shooter, absolutely keep that thing away from all forms of play, including casual. What a horrible design. And then the base jumper is the last thing here banned in North America. And very curiously, base jumper actually got unbanned in ETF2L. Now this is like the poster child of casual players' disdain for competitive players in general. This is like the poster child, justice for the base jumper and whatnot. And yeah, it has been banned for a while. And I think last time around I called it broken, which I still think it is fundamentally broken. Now, of course, you're giving up one of the strongest items in the game of the gunboats, which just fundamentally changes how a soldier can play. So it's a big trade-off. However, that extra damage from rocket jumps is certainly at least offset by the fact, if not entirely offset, somewhat offset by the fact that you can just avoid fall damage with this thing. And a soldier that's just in the skybox is such a bigger threat than one who is relegated to the ground, because you have better angles for spam. And of course, when you're that far away, again, this spam is going to be with damage fall off, relatively slow moving projectile. But players that might be behind cover, that might think that they're safe from traditional soldier play, suddenly that's not really the case anymore, and a soldier can just shoot everything while also being really difficult to take out themselves. Yeah, this, I'm curious because I don't see, to be honest, like competitive TF2 forums aren't really that much of a thing anymore. People don't really discuss the game there. It's more in their own niches nowadays, but I don't see much like ETF2L or European outrage over this thing. I don't know if it's even getting used that much. Honestly, North America, I think, should just follow their example if it's not obviously broken, but I'm very, very curious to see how this would play because it's just hard to believe that this isn't a like fundamentally broken unlock. But anyway, maybe competitive players are just all wrong and we don't know what we're doing, but yeah. So yeah, just following things up here, kind of reiterating my opinion on a lot of these items, but definitely have changed my opinion on some, so I figure it was worth updating. And yet again, yeah, also like a sort of unintentional goal of tackling some of that misinformation because it is floating around everywhere. People love to talk about how you're cutting out half the game and half the fun, half the whatever. Some people are saying you're banning 90%. I know like a lot of these are exaggerations, but like, no, this is what you're looking at. These are the reasons why. Like it's something you can understand if you try to understand it, but I recognize that some people are ignorant willfully rather than and sometimes maliciously. But anyway, yeah, just a little follow up here. Hopefully this was entertaining, and for those of you who already know this information and are just looking for a sleep aid, then hopefully that helped you out too. But anyway, that's all from me, and see you all next time.